As we've established, 6 houses together form one halachic city for Tchumen, and it's all considered like 4 amos. And the 2,000 amos that one is entitled to walk in each direction on Shabbos do not begin until it leaves the halachic city. Now, sometimes we can merge together 2 cities and form one super city. How do we do that? So the first example is the Mefurish Mishnah in Eruvin, Daf Nun Zayin and Aleph. The halach is that after you leave the city, before you even begin the 2,000 amos of Techum Shabbos, you're entitled to a karfif. We make a karfif around the city. What does a karfif mean? It means we give an area of 70 2/3 amos, or in our language, 125 feet, around the city. That's considered an extension of the city, and only after that do you begin the 2,000 amos of Techum Shabbos. Now let's say you have 2 cities that are near each other, so much so that the karfifus of the 2 cities overlap. That means the last house in city A is less than 250 feet from the first house in city B. So the karfifus, the extensions of the 2 cities overlap. Then the Mishnah says that the 2 cities are considered like one. And the 2,000 amos of Techum Shabbos for somebody who starts off in city A do not begin until he leaves city B. And the 2,000 amos of somebody who's starting in city B do not begin until he's made out from the other end of city A. So you have a tremendous a super city that you get before you even start your 2,000 amos of Techum Shabbos. And now we could take this even a step farther and create a super duper city. Because the halacha is that before you start your 2,000 amos of Techum Shabbos, when you leave a city, you square off the city. We've mentioned this in terms of with houses and fenced-in areas, that if they're not a perfect square, you square it off. 10 payas l'shavsei Shabbos, like the Gemara says in Eruvin Daf Nun Aleph. You square it off, and only after that do you begin the 2,000 amos of Techum Shabbos. So here also, when you have the halachic city, you don't just start your 2,000 amos when you exit the city at one end. Rather, we square off the city. So if you have a round city or a city that's squiggly on any side, most of our cities are like that. You square them off. Now, in the olden days, in the times of the Gemara, some cities had to be squared off, and some of them are naturally square because they had walls around the city. So very often the wall was built as a straight line, and the wall of the city was like a fence. Similarly, nowadays, if you have a city that has an Erev around it, it's possible that the Erev on, let's just say, the eastern side of the city is one straight line. So then there's no squaring off to do on that side because we have a natural straight line at the edge of the city. But in most cases, most halachic cities are jagged or rounded on all 4 sides. So before we start the 2,000 amos of Techum Shabbos, we first have to square it off. We make a ribua. We square off the cities. So one can refer to the Brisa and Daf Nun Hayim and Aleph and Eruvin and see over there many details and many halachas in terms of squaring off cities. Now let's say the squaring off of one city, which is now an extension of that city, jots into another city, or jots into the squaring off of a different city. So the accepted psak of most poskim, Chazon Ish and others, is that these 2 cities are now considered one. Similarly to what we established a few minutes ago, we established previously that if 2 karfifas overlap, if the 2 cities come within 250 feet of each other, they are now considered one super city. The same applies in terms of the ribua, the squared off area of the city. If the squared off area of city A jots into city B, or just jots into the squared off area of city B, now city A and B are considered one big city. And one does not start their 2,000 amos of Techum Shabbos until they have left city A and B, and until they have left the super squaring off of the whole situation of halachic city A and halachic city B. Now, when we talk about squaring off cities, there's one very important thing to know. The Gemara says on Daf Nun Hayim and Aleph and Eruvin that if you have an ir asiyik a keshes, a city that's shaped like a rainbow, most people know that a keshes is a rainbow. If you have a city that's shaped like a rainbow, or we could say like the letter ches, so if from the 2 ends of the rainbow, if the 2 ends of the ches is more than 4,000 amos, more than 7,080 feet, so then we cannot be merabeya. We cannot square off on this side. It's nirek shtei ayoros. It appears like 2 separate cities because the 2 extents of the city, the 2 ends of the city are so far from each other without houses in between filling it up. So in such a case, we do not get a ribua. We do not get to square off. So we do not get to square off, and therefore somebody who leaves the city starting from somewhere in the middle of the keshes, in the middle of the rainbow, and he starts walking out, his 2,000 amos for Techum Shabbos are going to begin pretty much right away. Similarly, also, if another city juts into this area, this 7,000 foot area between the 2 ends of the 2 cities are not going to become halachically attached or not become one, because there's no ribua given, there's no squaring off given to the keshes. So if the distance between the two Rosh HaKeshes, the two heads of the rainbow, is less than 7,000 feet, then we do square it off. We do close that up. In fact, many places can feel that that's even stronger than a ribuah. We fill it in almost as if it's part of the city. We imagine, like the Gemara says, as if it's filled up with houses and courtyards. However, if the distance between the two heads of the city is more than 4,000 amos, more than 7,080 feet, then there's no squaring off done at all. Similarly, if you have an ira asirika gam, gam is a Greek letter. It's an example of a shape of a city. It's something akin to a backwards capital L. So you have a city that's shaped like this, like an L. If between the two ends of the gam, if between the top of the gam and the foot of the gam, the distance is more on the diagonal, is more than 4,000 amos, more than 7,080 feet, we do not square off the gam. If the distance is less than those 7,080 feet, we do square off the gam. And now it becomes like a triangle. And now we further square it off by creating a mirror image to make it into a full proper square. Like we always like to make our halachic cities into squares and rectangles. However, if the distance between the two ends is more than 4,000 amos, more than 7,080 feet, we cannot square it off. And therefore, somebody who walks out of this gam on Shabbos, he's walking through the middle of the gam, his 2,000 amos for Techum Shabbos already begin. And if there's another city that juts into this area between the two ends of the gam, that does not make that other city connected to our city, which is shaped like a gam, like a backwards L, or rather they're each considered like separate cities in regards to Techum Shabbos.